Welcome to our Entrepreneur Family Podcast. Another exciting episode today. We are really excited to have our friends Robert and Kay Lee on with us today. A little bit about our, how did we get here? Like, where did this podcast come from? We know that all different walks of life end up on the entrepreneur journey. And so whether it looks like one of you is an entrepreneur and the other one is not, or both of you are, or maybe your family came from an entrepreneur background and maybe the other one didn't, whatever that looks like, it has shaped how you view entrepreneurship, business, marriage, family, and life. And so we are just really excited to continue to have conversations with a variety of different people that their journeys look different than ours. And so we want to hear stories, and we want to hear tips, tricks, and what I like to say is, how do we shorten the learning curve for other people to not pay as much dummy tax as we've paid along the way? And so we're just excited to have you both here with us today. I know that your journeys even look a little bit different from each other. And so either one of you, if you want to just let us know a little bit about who you are and how you ended up together. Let's start there.
Wow, that's a big. Just getting together is a big question. But thanks, Daryl and Brittany, for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
Really excited for this conversation. But honey, why don't you share your story first, especially your entrepreneurial side too?
So I'm third generation entrepreneur family, and it's just in my blood. It's kind of like all I know. And growing up, my dad worked 6 days a week and wasn't home much. And it was really tough on the family. So the business became the mistress, and our family ended up separating. My mom was raising 4 strong-willed children. Yes, I said 4. God bless her. I don't know how she did it. And it just really was a lot of tension on our family. I mean, we did have a lot of pluses as well growing up an entrepreneur, but that was some of the struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a PK. My dad was a pastor, so I didn't grow up in an entrepreneur household. So that wasn't part of my mindset or thinking growing up, was to get a business. So I just followed my dad's advice, was just go to school, get a job, and stay out of debt. Did the first 2 right. The debt part, I didn't quite listen or quite catch, because he never showed me how to stay out of debt. He just told me stay out of debt. So you know what they say, just whatever you say don't do, you're going to do it. You're going to doing it. But did go to school, paid my way through college, really fell in love with business and marketing specifically. So that's kind of where I concentrated my business degree, and then worked for Coca-Cola when I got out of college. That was my first job. And it's right when the World Cup was in the U.S. I was working in the Bay Area, so we had Stanford Stadium held one of the World Cup games, and so got to kind of get some experience in event marketing too. And then also we just had launched Powerade right before that, the year or two before that. So being part of launching a major brand was amazing. And then from there I went to the pharmaceutical industry, where I really spent the bulk of my career, 25 years. And then it was actually, like I said, I never thought about having a business. But I remember when I met Kay Lee, and we met online on a Christian dating site called Christian Cafe. And that's how we met. Because I just moved down to the Southern California, and I didn't really know anyone. So it's like, where I'm going to meet people. And I wasn't going to church at the time either. So I was just, it was interesting. I just, on my email, this is how it dates this. I had my AOL email account. It said, in the subject line in the inbox, it said meet Christian singles. And so I'm like, huh, that's interesting. So I click on it. And this is over 20 years ago. So this is kind of relatively new. Online dating was just kind of becoming more mainstream, more acceptable. And so I looked on the site, and I was like, okay, these ladies look pretty normal. Because
what's normal look like?
I don't know. But, and then I thought, well, I know my mom would like me to meet a Christian woman. So I kind of, started going through the profiles, and Kaylee's one that caught my eye, and sent her a message through the system. And then about 3 weeks later, she finally responded to me.
Yeah, because
that's a long 3 weeks.
Yeah, I got to keep them waiting. Well, my girlfriends in my Bible study, they were all online except for me. And so they knew how the system worked. They're like, just put your profile up and you'll get free days. You put picture up and you get more free days. So I would just check it on my free days. And so by the time I saw his email, it was like 3 weeks later. And he's like, who's this?
Yeah, 'cause in 3 weeks, I'm like thinking like, who is this? And I had to like look at her profile. And I'm like, oh, okay, I remember that one.
That one.
Well, let's be
Oh my
real.
gosh.
You're looking at a bunch of profiles. Come on. It's like shopping. You got the menu.
That one.
Um,
So when you guys got together, what did the beginning of your journey look like? Like, Kaylee, were you working? Like, what did it look like for you guys to navigate the beginning? Because I know working in corporate for so long, Robert, and then now doing what you do together, which I know that we'll hear more about in a little bit. That's obviously from left to right, you've covered the spectrum. So what does that journey looked like for you guys?
as far as like when we met to finally getting to this point.
Yeah, like working in corporate, and then as you've started to slowly work together now, I know for us, we've actually worked together for a really long time, but it just has like changed shapes along the way. We were in ministry together. And honestly, our like original working together, we were leading a spiritual gifts class at our church. And so we would do a PowerPoint every Sunday to people who were interested in learning about their spiritual gifts. And we weren't like married or anything yet, but even at that point, we were still working together. People were like, oh, you're opposites. You complement each other so well. And so it's always sort of been like this common through line for us that we've been able to work together. Does it look like that for y'all? Or were you kind of like opposite sides?
Well, I know at the beginning when we were dating, I told Robert, I see you having your own business, like being an entrepreneur. And he thought I was crazy because in my world, that was pretty much all I knew was entrepreneurs. And it just seemed like a normal.
And for me, it was like too big a risk, and I'm not a risk taker. So I was like, no, that sounds too risky. And so I just kind of, it was nice, we're dating. So I'm like, oh yeah, thank you for, thinking of that. But, I'm like, no way. But after we got married, and then, there's this teaching that kind of came through our church, and it's kind of been, taken hold, but it's all about the 7 Mountain Mandate. How that, because just our church, we've just been blessed to have a lot of, high level speakers. We've had like Lance Wallnau, Peter Wagner, and Bill Johnson, and there's so many people that come through, and there are a lot of them are starting to talk about the 7 mountains. How, ministry is not just vocational ministry, but ministry is where you work and where you are in the marketplace, and so also think, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about, okay, what's my purpose here? Am I supposed to stay in the corporate setting, or am I supposed to do something different? Started to then explore, is it a business? And if so, then what would it be? And so I just kind of print out a list of all the different industries, and I was just checking them all off. Nope, don't want to do that one. Don't want to do that one. Definitely don't want to do a restaurant. Just like all this stuff. And then I checked pretty much everything off. So I'm thinking, okay, that got me nowhere. So I thought, well, my background's in marketing, so maybe I'll do some marketing consulting on the side, look at different businesses, and then maybe I'll find a business that I want to start. And so I looked at it as like paid market research. Someone's going to pay me to help them, but at the same time, I get to look at their business and see, hey, is this the kind of business that I'd want to do? Turns out that I didn't want to do any of those, but I did love the consulting piece, and and it wasn't just about the marketing plans and execution marketing and sales and all that kind of stuff, but it was really about the impact that it made on the people, the owner. I get to work directly with the owner and the team, and just see the impact that it makes, the success that you're able to achieve with the marketing, the sales results. The impact it makes on the people was what really energized me. Yeah. And just the relationship. And so just started to delve into that. I said, okay, honey, I think this is what I want to do. And then she would ask me, so can I help? And I'm like, no. I don't think what I'm thinking is I don't think it's a good idea for our marriage. We got a good thing going here. Why ruin it? Right. By working together. So that was my thinking, but she kept pursuing because, like she said, she grew up in an entrepreneur household, so it's natural for her. So she kept pursuing. So I'd give her little assignments here and there. kind of learned some bumps in the roads of, what to do and what not to do when you're working together. But eventually, what happened was how we started really working together, like totally side by side now in tandem, is that I started, I was really primarily helping small businesses, and small business being like about $30 million in revenue and under. And they're asking, they're hiring me for marketing help. But as I look into the business, because I'm more of a chief marketing officer type person than a executor. Like I don't do like the social media and the video production, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Those are skills that I would hire out for, but I would do basically the marketing strategy for the business. But in order to do that, I really need to understand the business, how it's working inside and out. I look at the financials, I look at their margins, what price we're going to set, all that kind of stuff. And as I'm looking through the business, I'm like, oh, you got more issues here than just marketing. I said, number one, what the main thing I see is you're working way too hard. And there's just so much inefficiencies that's affecting your time and money margin. They're operating on such thin margins that what they're doing was they're overcoming that inefficiencies because they didn't know what to fix, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so you overcome that by just working more. Yeah. And so now the staff, everybody's just working hard. And hard work's not bad, but there's a point where it just becomes taxing and stressful, and it's not good for anybody. And then as you get to know the owners more, you start talking about their personal life, their marriage, their family, and how they don't have a life. And it was one client after another sharing the same type of story. And I'm like, okay, the business issue is they're not working well. Business definitely, there's so much they could be working better, smarter, not harder, and it's affecting home. And so that's when I looked at Kay Lee and I was like, I think there's an issue here that no one's really addressing that we need to fix. It's not just about fixing the business, but it's also about making sure that they're prioritizing home, because without that, they think that if the business does well financially, then the relationship takes care of itself, but that's not necessarily how it works. To make the relationship healthy, your marriage, your family, you got to be intentional about that, regardless of how well the business does or not. And so that was the tension these entrepreneurs are having. And so that's when we got to really start to come together, work together, because we deal with the couples together, these married entrepreneur couples. We work with them together, the two of us, the two of them. And so that's when we really started to kind of come into our sweet spot and working well, not just operationally, but just face forward with the clients. We work together on this, and now it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I think too, in the entrepreneur world, the go-to is we just work harder, and they're not keeping track of their matrix, their numbers. They don't know where they're at. We're trying to wear 101 hats, and there's no way we can be great at all those things. And then come home and have something left to spend with your family as far as time, emotions, being present.
Yeah.
I love it while we're here. This work-life balance challenge dynamic. What's kind of your process on how entrepreneurs who are unbalanced in their work-life balance and struggling to spend time with the family, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they don't generate a lot of revenue because all they do is, family memories and things like that. Like, what's your take on how we as entrepreneurs can create healthy work-life balance? What are some of those steps?
Yeah, first of all, it's more of a mindset issue. We got to start there. And it's the fact that you can't have both. You can't have it all at the same time, right? Like as far as how well the business does financially, I mean, that might be a series of steps and maybe a couple months and even years to get to a certain point. But regardless, you can have a healthy marriage and business at the same time. But when it comes to balance, it's about quality of time. It's not quantity of time. That's where people get tripped up. They think I got to spend X amount of time over here and X amount of time over there. That's not the issue. It's quality of time. Right. And when you start talking with the relationship first, in order to really have proper balance, you need to figure out what are your priorities at home, and what do you want to do? What can you do on a bare minimum, regardless of how busy? Because in a business, right? There's seasons in a business. There's busier stretches than others. But in general, I always start with the worst case scenario. When you've got one of those busy stretches, what's the one thing that you can do on a daily basis with your spouse and your kids that'll keep you connected. And so for us, it's prayer. Like first thing in the morning is prayer time. And whenever we bring this up, it's interesting how you're talking to Christian couples here. They may have all these excuses why they can't. Schedules are different.
We don't have time.
We all wake up at different times. I got the kids, the kids, yada. I'm like, really? 15 minutes a day of prayer you can't do. And you talk about faith and family as a priority, yet you can't sacrifice 50, and not sacrifice is a bad word. It should be sacrifice. You can't have those 15 minutes a day. Well, then if you really can't do that, you got a big problem that nothing I can do can solve.
Yeah.
Nothing can do solve. And so 15 minutes a day. So for us, if it doesn't happen first thing in the morning, it is harder as the day goes on. So that's the easiest time to do it is we just wake up a little earlier, regardless of how busy things are going to get, you just wake up a little earlier for those 15, 20 minutes of encouraging each other, praying over each other, blessing each other. And you start the day at peace with each other. And you're starting with God and each other first thing in the morning. I mean, really, foundationally, how do you start the day better than that?
There's nothing like having your spouse pray for you. It sets the whole tone for your day. There's no way you can be fighting or arguing with your spouse when you're praying. At least I haven't found that to be, I've been able to do that. So, and it's like, you just have to be really intentional about the time. Like, okay, we're going to do it at this time and we're not going to let anything else creep in there. Whether it means waking up an extra 5 minutes, going to bed earlier, there's a lot of different ways you can do that.
Yeah. And so for some, if it's in the evening, fine, but you got to find that time. Right. And then Family Institute did a research on this, and it showed that the couples that pray actively together daily, the divorce rate is 1 in over 1,100. So that means it's a fraction of 1%.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Which is significantly different than the standard divorce rate. Like
40 to 50%. Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Because think about this. I mean, there's a spiritual element to this, but I'll just talk about the practical side of this. As Kay Lee was alluding to, psychology research also shows that you can't be speaking positive and negative results and negative things about each other at the same time. And when you're filling each other up with positive, the negative goes down, because we all want attention, positive or negative. Even negative attention is attention. So what happens in most couples as we age in our years of marriage, as there's less and less of that encouragement and blessing and all that. We did that in their dating years, but somehow after you say I do, it becomes less.
Right.
And so what happens is more about the day-to-day tasks, what you need to do, what you didn't do, right? It's all that stuff. It's more, and it's not that intentional encouragement. And so when you do that daily, right now, those disagreements that we have don't become mass conflict.
Yeah.
Because we've been filling each other up daily.
Yeah.
Right. That's why the divorce rate becomes so low, is because we're just we're filling our house up with positive energy.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it, because I know typically when you get into like, okay, it's crisis, it's explosion, all of these things have been building up. It takes so much to try to come back together. But essentially what you're saying is like, hey, we're going to go on the offense, and we're going to like put so much change in the bank little by little every single day. 15 minutes is not a lot every single day, but that is going to, it's sort of like preventive medicine, right? Because when you're in the crisis and you're in the throes of it, or you're, all of the things that can trip up business and marriage, right? Like there's the finance side of it. There's the purpose side of it. Like, hey, do I really feel like I'm in my lane? Do I feel like I'm succeeding? Am I meeting my clients' expectations? All of those things have so much pressure on them. So when you really get in an explosion, it takes so much to mend and repair. So putting that intentional time and having that like preventive care ahead of time is such a good method. I know, like for us, a long time. So we'll be married 10 years in December. But I can remember sitting in our house in Mount Pleasant and trying to do these Bible studies early in the morning together. It did not go so well, and it did not last very long. We were in a very different place. but we would come together and really try to like just read some scripture and talk about it. And it always felt like we just couldn't like gel. Either I would like be constantly yawning because I'm not really a morning person, and then Gerald felt like he was boring me or he wasn't meeting, whatever like mantle he had to lead our family. But I'm like, no, I'm just like yawning because I'm tired, or whatever insecurity I felt like, oh, I don't have a deep revelation to bring to the table. And he's like, Pastor Daryl, like there's so many things that the enemy can use to get in the way of that time. And so if you have tried before and you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I like what they're saying, it makes a lot of sense, there's some pain in that area, I would definitely just say like, dip your toe back in the water, right? If you don't have the same in meditation, really, it's like, hey, if I can't do 15 minutes and my mind is wandering and I'm everywhere and I feel disconnected, let's take 3 minutes together.
Yeah.
Can we do 3 minutes together most days of the week this week? And then you build that confidence and you build that like, I trust him and he trusts me. And it feels really great that we're praying for one another. And it feels great that we're being vulnerable in that way. And then we can begin to heal some of those old wounds that in reality, they get really big in our minds as the time goes by. Like, I think if we sat down to do a Bible study right now, even a little bit of that would be like, okay, this is not that. We're good. We're different people. We can do this.
I think to your point too, it's finding the thing that works for you. Right. And even if you do a Bible study, it'd probably be the same thing for us too. One can be the orator and the reader, and the other one can be just the prayer and just feedback and just encouragement. You can even have your own roles in that Bible study and just allow yourselves the permission to just stay in your lane and be good at that. What is my role in this Bible study? I don't have to always come with a word, right? But there's probably things you can do where there's just thinking, Daryl, that was a freaking amazing message, and that encouragement, right? So Daryl's filled up because he gets to share, you get the feedback, but you're in your own way, you're absolutely participating in that Bible study, right? And it doesn't matter how it looks; it's a matter about how do you just encourage each other.
Well, and it's not about being perfect at all. It's not about performing. It's just speaking an encouraging word over each other and thanking the Lord for your spouse. And, we don't have to make it any more than that.
And it's also make it fun, right? So like our prayer time, I swear, I've always swear I gotta video this because our dog, our little 5-pound Yorkie, loves prayer time. Because one, she just likes to be on our lap anyway. So then when it's prayer time, I go,
Wait, I got to back it up. So Robert's got this big chair, oversized chair that he sits in, and he spends time with the Lord. And I say, honey, and now it's time for prayer. I said, can I come over? It's like, no, there's not room for you. I get myself up. I go over there. I stuff myself in the chair because, that's not going to stop me. The dog comes over, jumps on. I got the blanket on me to keep me warm, and we start praying.
So the dog. So I start prayer. I start the prayer first, and then she concludes, and she goes second. So the dog hops on. She's usually just laying in the lap, and maybe she's licking my hand or something like that. But then when it's her turn to pray, in the beginning part, she's still calm. But then kind of midway through her prayer time, she perks up and she starts looking at Kay Lee. She's kind of looking at me and she gets a little antsy. And then because she knows the word amen.
Oh.
And after we pray, that means playtime.
And we both say,
so I toss the toy.
Amen.
I toss the toy. So she waits for the amen because she knows it's playtime. So she knows as it's getting closer to the wrap up for the prayer, and she gets a little more antsy, and then she starts to. And so one time we're thinking, does she really know the word amen, or does she just kind of know the conclusion? So one time we said, in Jesus' name, and she got up and she's looking at us, but we didn't say amen. And she was like looking, and she's just looking at both of us like. And then we say amen, and then she barks, and then she jumps off and grabs the toy. So.
And then Robert goes and plays with her.
It's so funny.
More than you want to know. But anyways, all about fun time, right?
That's cute.
I love it.
Oh, that's so cute. I'd love to get into obviously you guys wrote a book on this. I see it right there in the background, Tandem. Awesome. I don't know if you talk about this in your books, but I know it was like on one of the topics that you guys mentioned was this 3 pillars of growing business in a way that leads to freedom. I'm curious as to what those pillars are, and wanted to hear about that and see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, that's chapter 7, 8, and 9. so the book is kind of split up in two in a ways. It's partly really focused on the marriage and a relationship, getting on the same page, establishing your vision, knowing how to do conflict well. And the second half is how do you do your business better? How do you work smarter, not harder? And so the 3 pillars is time, money, and performance. So in order to start or grow a business, it's time and money, right? It's time and money you put into it. But the other part, the performance piece, is about how do you measure performance? How do you measure the performance of the time and money you're putting in instead of just putting time and money in?
Right.
So with the time part is, as owners, we spend a lot of time, I don't say waste, but we spend a lot of time not working in our zone of genius, meaning the things that we're excellent at and it gives us life.
Yeah.
Right. So we always ask, what are the 2 to 3 things that are in your zone of genius that you're really excellent at, gives you life, and that would be very productive for the business and will move your business forward. Right. And those 2 to 3 things in general, statistically, only about the average owner spends only about 30% of their time in their zone of genius. And the other 70% of time in that busy work, administrative work, putting out fires, right? Just responding to things.
The stuff that anybody you can hire that can do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we're just talking about this.
And so that's the first place we start when time is just the owner's time. Where are you spending your time? And so with the other stuff that's not in your zone of genius, we say, how can you automate, delegate, or eliminate those things? So basically, how do you minimize it? So you go instead of 30-70, 30% in your zone of genius, 70% in the other stuff, how do we flip-flop that ratio?
Yeah.
And so automation, these days with technology, there's a lot of automation tools you can use to at least streamline your work. Delegation, even if you don't have even if you're a solopreneur, hire your first virtual assistant or contract workout like I do, with the marketing stuff, I contract that stuff out. Eliminate, meaning what are things that you should just say no to either now, forever, or at least temporarily, so that you can focus on the things that will drive your business.
And that can also be saying no to good things. When we did our book tour, we had to say no to a lot of things we wanted to do because there was no way we could do the book tour and get everything else done that was a priority at that moment. So
yeah.
And then the money piece is again performance. It's all for us. It's all about margins. So for the average, like I said earlier, a lot of businesses think marketing is the answer. We need more sales, more sales, more sales.
Yeah.
So we had one client not too long ago hired us. They had lost about $800,000 a year before, and they were operating in the red ever since they bought this business. Been about 5 years, and so they met with the owners. And they said, "Oh, we need more sales. We need more sales." And I said, "No, you're doing $5 million in revenue. You should be able to be profitable." I said, as I look in their financials, I was like, you're really operating on the really thin margins. And I don't see a way, if I did a forecast, I don't see a way you can get to profitability without driving yourself nuts or at least adding more expenses. Because in order to drive growth, right, you're probably going to be spending more money, and even more volume means probably hiring more people just to support the growth, whether it's in the warehouse or whatever, you name it, right? So I said it'd be chasing your tail for trying to drive sales because there's going to be other expenses that are going to have to come in. And so you have a margin issue. And so what we did was we looked at from pricing, which small business owners are notorious for pricing themselves too low. They don't value they don't understand the value of their product and service, and they're afraid of losing customers if they price themselves based on more in line with the value of the product and service. So we inherently price themselves a little bit lower to try and get more customers. But what you're doing is now you're just shrinking your margins. Now you're forced to get more customers. And they don't understand how many more customers you need to get in order to make up for the shortfall in the margins. And so start with that. And then expenses, how do we cut expenses? Not by just slashing costs, but by improving performance. So like say if you're an e-commerce site, which they have an e-commerce site, I said, okay, you're already driving some sales through your pay-per-click ads. What if you were able to increase just your sales conversion rate on your website from 0.8% to 1.2?
Yeah.
That's a 50% growth in sales just from your
That's
pay-per-click
huge.
ads.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we started to assign metrics. That's the performance piece, is assigning metrics to all the things that you do and spending your money.
Yeah.
And then let's look at how do we improve these metrics.
Yeah.
That's where the business plan comes in. The business and marketing plan comes in on the backside, is then how do we improve these metrics? And it's not by one big thing. For this client, it was just a series of increases from conversion rates to even the pay-per-click ad performance to marketing to the warehouse staffing, be able to ship more in the same day with the same staff, right? Just be more efficient.
Yeah.
We invest into more better POS. So we just tore down the financial statement. Basically, what that allows us to do, look at every piece of the business, do the financial statement, and then go, how do we improve these areas?
So all these little things added up to a huge amount.
Yeah. So instead of swinging for the fences, like a lot of businesses try to do, try to get that one viral video to go viral or one post to go viral, stuff like that. Those things can happen, but statistically, it's less than 1% of a post or a video that's going to go viral. So we can't bank on that.
Right.
What we can do is what we can control is all those little metrics along the way, all those margin issues and metrics things that we can control, fix those things, and then we'll get to the backside. So in 1 year, we're able to turn around to get to not to break even, but to profitability.
Right.
And here's a kind of a funny story of how we get so focused on the top line, we negate the bottom line. Is that year end, we got the year end report, financial report. I'm sitting with the CFO, and he says we surpassed our profit goals. We're just trying to get to break even by the end of the year. They're actually squeaking at the black, right? And I'm like, awesome, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But he had this like solemn look in his face, and I'm like, what? I think you should be happier, right? This is the first time you're in profitability in your business, in the entire time you have the business. He said, yeah, but the team was disappointed and we missed our sales goals. And I'm like, so? I'd rather have better profits than better sales.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're so focused on sales driven. We're so sales driven, top line focused that we forget what it actually takes to get profits. So you can actually have lower sales but higher profits, and that's where the margins come in. So that's the snippet: time, money, and performance.
And that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to keep track of, is their numbers, and they don't know where they're at financially, and it can be a big challenge.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to find out at the end of the year, oh my gosh, this product we thought we were doing so well with, we were losing money with.
Right. And months ago, we could have made adjustments and things like that.
And it shows you how, right, when we're always sales focused, we're chasing sales. Whereas, no, we just fixed some things internally. We drove profitability without working harder. We just worked smarter.
Yeah.
And we're able to achieve more with less. And so that's kind of the crux of work-life balance, is focus on a relationship first. Now in the business, how do we just work better?
Yeah.
Not just work more.
I love it because there's so many parallels between the marriage conversation we were just having and then the business conversation that we just had, right? Like incremental changes. You don't have to swing for the fences in either area.
That's our title for chapter 10, by the way. Stop swinging for the fences.
Wow. Look at that.
But it just speaks to both. It speaks to the fact that you can take these principles and apply them in your home, and you can apply them in your business. And I mean, really, they are across the board in your health, everywhere. Like, what does it look like to give intentionality, not in such a way that you max out and then you're done for the whole month or the rest of the year, right? But it's like, how do we make intentional, incremental deposits into our life and into our business and our health and our kids and everything else in a way that over time and distance, we've created something that's really healthy and it's sustainable. And we really love what we've built. And I do think it takes looking at it, right? Not everybody loves looking at their numbers. It's funny because just last week we had, friends of ours on, and we were talking she's an accountant, and we're looking at why don't people like to look at their numbers? It's really tough sometimes when you avoid it for so long because of money stories and money trauma. But same thing, if there's things in your marriage or your family that you really don't want to look at for a really long time, how do you just get back in a position where you can take a deep breath, feel safe enough to start to make those changes and just look at it, right? Like just get a scope of the lay of the land first and then make those deposits.
Yeah. And if you just ignore it, right, the problem doesn't go away. It just gets worse.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens with just our marriage, our business, the things that we're avoiding, we don't want to look at because we're afraid to. It just gets worse. And so at some point, right, you got to face the issue. Otherwise, it's not going to fix itself. So intentionality is huge. Yeah.
Well, and don't be afraid to get some help if it's something that you don't like. And we don't expect our clients to be fabulous with numbers. Robert loves that. But he just wants them to know enough to be dangerous, just to see like if something looks a little off, and to question something in your gut if you're like, oh, I don't know about this. And then take it to Robert or another professional and ask him, hey, does this look off to you? Does something not look right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because sometimes, we hear these stories about like, embezzlement and stuff. And they're like, we had no idea. I didn't keep track of my numbers. I just turned everything over to this accountant or bookkeeper. And you're like, oh my gosh, this has been going on for years. Someone's been stealing. It's like so sad.
Yeah. It's a good point. If as a business owner, you don't need to be the expert in it. You don't need to be expert in anything really. You just need to be kind of, like I said, just know enough to be dangerous in all aspects of the business so you can see. And then what team do you bring around you? The experts. You surround yourself with the experts in these different areas. You just need to have the vision and drive the ship, right? And keep things going forward. You don't need to be an expert at everything, but you do need to look at everything.
Right.
Cool. I got two questions as a follow-up. Well, question one is like, y'all seem like y'all like we call them like, I see like there's usually two couples. Like there's the opposites that attract, and then there's like we call them like the best friends. Like they're the same. They like the same things. They listen to the same music. Like best friends forever. I don't know where y'all are at actually, but my perception is like y'all are on the best friend type of thing. Y'all seem like y'all just like love a lot of the same stuff. Is that true?
Well, we're both. We're both.
I was going to say that too.
We have a lot of opposites.
We love a lot of the same things, but you know what? When an argument strikes up, it's like our opposites.
Our
really
communication styles are opposite.
Oh, big time.
That's actually that was actually where I was going with that first question. Is like, do y'all ever argue? And if so, like, what are the common things? And more importantly, like, how do you move through that so it doesn't impact in your business or have a prolonged negative impact in your relationship, right? And I'll do a quick shares because oftentimes we find, and we're way better at it these last like 2 years than we have been historically, of like, we'll get in a little doozy and then it's like, I call it working around each other in the business.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're just doing stuff and stuff that we probably should be communicating about. We're not, because of the, we argued about in the morning. And it's like a month of doing that, it ends up being like, oh, well, we kind of were like going like this in the business. And now our business is like that. So just curious of like how y'all, what are like some of the common arguments and then how do y'all actually resolve that?
Well, we went to 2 years of premarital counseling, and that's in the book. That's a whole story of putting Robert through the ringer. But from childhood, our childhood upbringings. But we take our couples through this too. It's called rules of engagement. So in our household, as a child growing up, we didn't resolve conflict. Our idea of conflict was we didn't want to talk about stuff. My mom would get mad. She'd get in the car and storm out of the driveway. And I'd think, oh my gosh, Lord, please let her come home safely because I know she's mad. And I'm thinking, I don't know if she's going to come back. My dad would walk out of the room. I don't want to talk about it. Don't bother me. We'd hang up on the phone. So it was horrible.
Yeah.
So we came up with our rules of engagement, which is going to be different for each couple, is that I thought in my mind, like if Robert got mad at me, I would wonder, and he walked out the door, I would think, oh my gosh, is he going to come back? And that would create all this anxiety inside of me. And I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. And so ours is if we are in a heated discussion and we don't feel like
intense fellowship.
There you go.
And we don't feel like we're able to make any headway at the moment, Robert will say to me, honey, I love you. I need a break. and I'm going to go on a walk and I'll be back in an hour, something like that. And then he will honor that. And for me, that just brings calmness because I know we're going to talk about it again. He's not just saying we're going to talk about it and then never discuss it again, because that would really cause anxiety in me. And I know he's coming back and I know that he loves me. So that kind of just like brings me down. I can take a deep breath and he leaves or whatever he's going to do. And then he comes back and then we will have the conversation again, or you know what? Maybe we'll table it for another time. I'm not exactly sure.
But you have to set a date and time to talk about it.
Yeah.
You don't just say later.
Yeah.
Because that's when the person on the receiving end is going to get discouraged and frustrated because when are we going to talk about this? This is something we need to talk about. So the rules of engagement, if you give a sports metaphor, it's what's inbounds, what's out of bounds. So what's allowed, what's not allowed. So the things that are inbounds is like, we're talking about this, clarifying questions. We set the stage, number one, of creating a safe space to have a discussion. So it's usually making sure you find a neutral space, not your bedroom or the dining room table, those kind of intimate family things. You want to have a space for that's not, that you're not going to violate by having intense fellowship, right? Because otherwise that space becomes known for whatever. So you definitely don't want the bedroom.
Right.
And then out of bounds is usually the things that we know will trigger our spouse.
Because we all know it, and that's not okay to
so for me, it's sarcasm. And there's certain words and things that are things that you do that right? When you get upset, all of a sudden, like you just throw out, you got your golf clubs with the stuff, you just throw stuff out there, right? People, the past arguments, all those things. So those are those things that we put out of bounds that we agreed to. We don't do because it doesn't help the conversation, right?
It's just gonna keep you stuck.
And then it makes it more and more personal, now becomes more and more of a personal attack. And so a lot of conflicts are really about that. It's not about the topic. We're no longer discussing the topic. It's really about,
and I'm not listening.
Yeah, we're not listening.
I know one time we were having this discussion and we weren't agreeing on, we were selling a property and we weren't coming on an agreement on, I don't even remember what the issue was. And we tried talking about it a couple of times and we just didn't seem to be able to move forward. And so Robert goes in the other room and then he comes back a few minutes later and he's like, honey, do you realize we agree on more than we disagree? And I'm like, no, because, I just want to win the argument. And so he goes, this is what we agree on. And I'm like, oh, wow, we do. And he's like, so it was just that one little piece. Yeah. And then once we realized that, we were able to talk about that and move forward.
I mean, literally it took a minute to resolve that one last piece of issue, but it got too personal, right? We started like standing our ground, that we weren't even listening to each other anymore.
Yeah.
And so we have to take these discussions and not make it personal. And that's what happens. And the last piece is these, especially when you're working together or just in life in general, it's about us. Two becomes one. It's about us. But too many times in these disagreements, it becomes about me and her.
Yeah.
Right? We defend ourselves. We dig our heels in. Now we're competing against each other. Right? And that's not teamwork, right? You don't compete against your teammate. You don't want to beat your teammate.
Right?
On the court, you want to support each other and win. So there was one time, it was another, finances, the number one topic in most, arguments, right? Couples arguments. So there's another financial issue that we had years ago that we're disagreeing on. And Kay Lee said her piece. And then she said, I know you'll make the best decision for us. And as soon as she said that, I felt the weight of this decision get heavier. And I'm like, oh, this isn't about me. Right? I was digging my heels in. I did all the analysis. She didn't have a good feeling about it. Right?
And I can't prove it. I don't have any data.
So then it took me about a week to just process this, to say I looked at her side versus my side. And I looked at the whole situation, 360. And then a week later, I came to her and I said, I think you're right.
And I said, about what? Because he already told me he felt differently. And so I hadn't thought any more about it. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess he's going to go with his, how you felt.
Yeah. So ever since that, like that that's what the two became one thing. It became real, right? Now all of a sudden the marriage vows got really real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're right. Every decision we make, I make or she makes, it impacts us, regardless of what the issue is. It impacts us. And so, yes, we got to stop. We got to stop arguing about each other's stances and look at this thing going, what's the best decision for us?
Yeah.
And so now, when we have these discussions, sometimes we go with my idea or her idea, but most of the times we just take the best of both and say, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
Because too many times in marriages, you hear about compromise. And to me, compromise is not a good way of looking at it, because I looked at the definition of compromise, and it's basically selling for less than great. It's basically what it says. So basically you're giving up pieces of good, and you're trying to meet in the middle, which is usually less than.
Right.
And so it's like, that's not the right way to do this. It's how do we resolve this thing that's the best for us? How do we come up with the best?
Yeah.
And sometimes, and a lot of times it's just taking the best of both ideas and figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's where the discussion comes into play, because a lot of times when we do that, we come up with a better solution than if we went with either of our ideas alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So good.
Yeah.
And if you don't get things resolved, it's just going to affect your marriage and your business. You're not going to be able to move forward. And you're like, oh my gosh, once you're able to get things resolved, the business can really flourish, and your marriage at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes. Totally
I agree.
So good. Gold. I hope you all are catching that. That was the first question. The second one was this, and sort of the prelude to the question is like, for me, you probably heard this leadership axiom that some things are taught and other things are caught, right? And I've always learned so much faster and better when I was like hands-on, like I'm a tactile learner in person with people. So it's kind of like for me, I was always like, to me, apprenticeship is like one of the fastest ways to accelerate my growth in an area. Because if I hang with someone that runs the business model that I want to run at the level I want to run it, and I watch their daily habits, like I said this to my clients all the time, I'm like, sometimes I just wish they could like almost live with us for like 2 to 4 weeks, and then be like, what we're trying to do over the course of 9 months, you'll get in 2 to 4 weeks because you're like immersed in it.
Right.
And so the question is kind of like, if we were immersed in your life, like what would we find are those disciplines, those consistent habits that enable you to have the quality of life and business that you have?
I think just look at the calendar. I think it starts with the calendar, right? For us, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't get done. So you really got to take control of the time. I think that's where it starts. And, we got this one question a while back about, how do you find the time to do marriage and, prayer and all that stuff? I said, well, one, if it's a priority, you don't find time. It's actually, you start with that. So it's almost like you got to, instead of trying to fix, your life that's all kind of, messed up, it's like deconstruct it, tear it down. Sometimes in a house, it's better just to tear it down and build up. Yeah. It's cheaper and faster to do it that way than try to fix all the stuff that's in it. Right. So our own life and business, you just deconstruct it. So it's tear it down, start from scratch. Take a blank slate. Let's say your calendar. Take a blank slate and plug in the priorities first. Right, of course, Sunday time, but then there's a prayer time in the morning, from 6 to 6:30, well, it's reading and then praying at 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock. Then we start our prayer time. And then I do my walk, to do my smoothie in the morning, and then get started for the day. Right. So and then we have our weekly meetings on Monday at 3:30.
Every week.
So that keeps us on the same page, calendar wise, looking for the future, not personally and business wise.
Yeah.
Right. Looking at, here's a busy stretch coming up. We know what to expect. Okay. What do we do? And then how do we celebrate on the back end? Because we may have to sacrifice a date night here and there. But once we're at this busy stretch, what do? How do we celebrate? We don't just go to the next thing. Right. So we start being very forward looking in everything. That's the weekly meeting is so important for us to stay on track.
Yeah.
And then that weekly meeting, y'all are doing business and fam. It's not just one or the other, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
So we start with just an encouraging word. Right. It's a theme. We start with how do we encourage each other? Start with an encouraging word. And then we go to sync calendars. And then we have projects, business, family issues, whatever. We have a kind of a list.
Talk about finances, because we need to know where we're at with all these things. Because if I start getting a little anxiety if I don't know where we're at, like financially. What projects do we have coming up? You know, if Robert has a lot of speaking engagements, I like to know ahead so we can plan something either before or after. We'll put vacations on there. We could even do like a long weekend, because seriously, if we don't put that stuff on there, it just doesn't happen. I mean, if we think, oh yeah, we're gonna go on vacation, but it's not on the calendar, it just doesn't magically
filled, right? It just, if it's
Yeah.
open space, it's gonna get filled. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's on the personal side. That's kind of the bare stuff that we do. And then on the business for me, you know, Mondays is always my on the business stuff. You know, there's certain things I do. And then Wednesday mornings, I always do what I call outreach. So stay connected and reconnect or stay connected with, you know, it's from personal to business. One of the things I noticed a couple of years ago was that, you know, our relationship's good, but one of the relationships I was failing was my friends. And so I made sure I say, hey, I need to stay connected with my friends too. Right. And then, so there's that part, but also business, you know, there's people I want to connect with or reconnect with. So those are very intentional about doing those outreaches, because otherwise, you know, a lot of times you're like, oh, I need to, you know, get touch base with so-and-so, and you never do it. Right. So now what happens is I just put it on my calendar and it's business and personal stuff. And then Friday mornings is my finance catch-up day, is really okay, look in the finance, see, you know, it's amazing, like expense creep comes in. Like you sign up for something, especially like in our line of work, you know, subscriptions for this, that, and the other thing, one AI tool after another, you know, and so there's so much expense creep. And so that just helped me stay on top of it. Like going, okay, do I still need that? Am I using it? Am I getting a return on anything? Right. And, you know, when I'm doing it on a week-to-week basis, it doesn't take much time, but it makes sure that I just stay on top of it. That's all it is. And then every quarter we have a kind of a deep dive.
And then too, I want to say, like on Mondays, you'll put big chunks of time that you will do the content where he just needs to sit down and lock himself in his office for like 2 or 3 hours and not have any interruptions, just to get the content done. Otherwise, if he doesn't do that, you know, he keeps getting all these interruptions. He never gets the content done. And then you have to keep going back to write the content. And then you start something else and it just gets broken up and not focused.
I don't take any appointments or anything. Mondays are just strictly, you know, just really stay focused. And then my appointments are typically Tuesdays and Thursdays. That leaves me the other 3 days, again, like Mondays you heard, and then, you know, Wednesday, Friday mornings, but then the other parts of the day, make sure when it's client work or whatever. And so, and I, you know, I think you guys use a Calendly system too, or something similar, but my Calendly system really helps keep me in control. Because I have different calendar links for different purposes. And they have different access points, right? So our clients have the most access to us Tuesday through Friday. If it's just someone who wants to pick my brain, they have very limited access on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right. And so those are some of the things that help keeps us stay on track with, you know, we got our client work, of course, but we also do other things to move the business forward, you know, doing interviews like this. Right. And so those are, you just got to take control of your time so you can stay focused on the things that will drive moving things forward.
And stay intentional about being in your zone of genius, because it's just not going to happen. You think, oh, I really want to do this, I love this. And then a fire or something will happen. And then you're like, oh, I haven't worked on that in 6 months. And I really love that.
Well, guilty.
I know. We're both feeling that. We have a big conference coming up, and we're both like, there's some really juicy stuff we want to look at. We have to stop looking at these fires because ultimately they're not. Most of them are not as urgent as they.
That's what we find. Yes.
Hundo. Man, y'all are the best, man. I love you. I told you this, you know, before we interviewed, but just love your humor. Love your energy, your smiles. Just something about being around you just makes our days brighter.
Thank you. Sweet.
Man, look at that encouraging word.
I know.
We gotta pipe Daryl in. We gotta pipe Daryl in Monday afternoons.
There you go. I got you. Just wrap it up for encouraging word for the day. Love it, man. And I hope everyone who's tuned in has recognized that, you know, as much as it's like, I'm sure that they gel naturally, there's also an intentionality about their relationship and about how they move through life and business that creates that freedom, that joy, that life, that smile, that safety that you all feel, we hope, as we feel it.
Yeah.
Man, I want to thank some people. I see Oscar, Christian, Michael Lima. What's up, bro? I see Alexis, Katrin. Thank you for tuning in. Candace Mama, haven't seen you so long, my friend, over from South Africa. But and everybody else who's tuned in, thank you. This is our Entrepreneur Family Podcast live with Robert and Kay Lee. They have we talked about work-life balance. We talked about so many habits and tools and strategies to stay connected in marriage. We talked about these pillars of business and how to handle time and performance. What was the third? You remember?
Time, money.
Time, money. Come on, it's classic thing. So many nuggets. So if you just like tuned in kind of the second half, maybe go back and watch the beginning. This will be live on most of our channels. So make sure you go back and rewatch and let us know, what are you taking away? What maybe are some lingering questions that you might have? We're going to kind of land the plane here. I love Robert, Kay Lee, just whatever's on your heart to kind of share with the audience as we kind of close out this live stream. What comes up for you that you just want to share?
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just want to encourage everyone, you can have your dream life, right? But let's start with the priorities first. We talk about helping our couples set vision. You always ask, what's your best vision for your life in the future? But then back it into the present and say, what can I do in some part now? Mm-hmm. So whether it's your personal habits, as a couple, the business issues, where you're going to live, taking vacations or breaks and all that kind of stuff, you may not be able to do exactly what you're visioning 10, 20, 30 years from now, but you can do something now, right? The key thing is you got to enjoy the journey and not just be grinding out in the business. You got to enjoy the journey, and you got to take time out to rest. We didn't talk about rest as much, but number one, it's the 10 commandment, obey the Sabbath. Yeah. It's not just a spiritual issue, but there's a physical, mental, and emotional benefit for rest. So which means you'll be high performing when you're working. Yeah. Right. So, but you have to be very intentional about how you live your life, and you have more control than you realize. It's just that we just feel the tension, the pull to have to respond to a lot of things. Yeah. Yeah. So it's take back control of your life. If you really want to have the best life now, you got to take a little bit more control of it. Yeah. Regardless of what the business is, we can fix the business over time. Yeah. But in the meantime, you can still have live a good life now.
Yes. And I want to say, give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. I know Robert and I, we have our own challenges with communication. I don't want you to think we're all got it all figured out, because You're
perfect. You wrote the book.
Well, you better read the book.
Yeah.
There's some stories.
And I want to give you guys all hope that, we can get on the same page together, you guys, and don't allow your spouse's differences to irritate you. I know with Robert, he was so detailed, and it used to bug me all the time. Like, he'd be like, honey, you didn't dot this I, you didn't cross this T. And I'm like, driving me crazy. But now when I'm doing something super detailed, I'm like, can you look at this and tell me what you think? Work in each other's strengths. Don't let it irritate you anymore. Yeah. And yeah, that's what I want to say.
And just a quick response to, the perfect thing, because everybody looks at us and, thinks, do you ever have an argument? And the response, we gave our response, but the reason why we're able to stay so happy and engaged is because we truly do forget our arguments, because we've resolved them. Mm-hmm. If you resolve them, we don't keep it in the backpack for a future argument.
Yeah.
Right. We literally don't remember. The ones we remember are just the funny, stupid ones. That's what the ones that made in the book, because you're like, why do we even argue about that? That's totally stupid.
You didn't put the toilet seat down again. I can't believe it.
So, when you're able to really truly resolve conflict, when both parties feel heard, understood, and valued, then you really do forget, and you don't have any lingering tension. and we can just live our life and be happy.
It's beautiful.
So
Thank
good,
you.
man. Make sure you guys head over to their website, marriedentrepreneur.co. And it's right there on the screen. Check that out. Don't type that M in there because it might take you somewhere else, but .co. All right. Man, really great people. And then we already put their book website link. And then obviously I'm sure you can chase that from their website as well.
On the website. Yep.
Yeah. Go check them out. Connect with them. And they are inspiring people in a wealth of wisdom. We barely scratched the surface of what's available through both of their wisdom. So connect with them, and y'all already know, share this with anyone who you know can benefit from them. Man, if you haven't tapped into our event, TEDx Alexander Park, we're 7 days away. Well, eight days away from the day of the event. For us, but there's a VIP dinner and rehearsal the day before. So 7 days for us, 8 days for you. So and man, excited. So man, head over to TEDxAlexanderPark.com, grab your tickets. I think they're like $79 right now, right? So super affordable for a TEDx conference, amazing network. It's all there on the site. And can't wait.
I wish we're there closer. I wish we lived closer.
I know.
Coming from all over now.
Yeah.
Majority of people are going to be local to the community there in the Atlanta region, but we've got people coming from out of state, and I don't think out of the U.S. this year. I don't
think so.
Yeah, last year, yeah, but not this year. So, well, maybe, I don't know. We still got 8 days, so we'll see.
How fun!
Yeah, I know, super fun. And our theme this year is awe and wonder. Can you believe when people have more awe and wonder in their life, so our world will take on more of that fabric.
Awesome.
So really excited about that. All right. So love y'all. And until next time, peace.